Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Can you all hear me okay in the back? Great. My name is Carissa Little, and I'm the Managing Director of Programs here at the Stanford Center for Professional Development. I'll give you a little bit of background about our center in a bit, but I wanted to make mention that during the presentation, either for those of you who are in the room or the 30 or so people that we have tuned in to the live stream, you can ask questions at our Twitter site at Stanford CPD, #SCPDgrad. You can ask questions live. Obviously, we'll have a Q&A session at the end, but you're welcome to, if you prefer to ask a question via our Twitter feed, you're welcome to do that. So with that, I'd like to welcome you. Our speakers tonight, a little bit about myself. I've worked here at Stanford since about 2001 and in the School of Engineering since 2003. So it's really been my pleasure to serve the school and Stanford in working with folks like you, working professionals, to help you further your education. With me today, I have Michelle Lucas-Rice, who is our Associate Director of Graduate Programs. She's also been with us since about 2008. And Larry Lagerstrom, who just joined the team, he was formerly the Director of Online Learning here in the School of Engineering, and he's joined us to oversee our graduate program. So we'll be hearing more from them a little bit later today. So here's our agenda. I'm going to give you a little bit of history about Stanford and the School of Engineering. We're going to talk about how you engage in your online course, a little bit about your rights and your responsibilities, as well as 6 tips to succeed for studying. Being a distance student is really, really challenging, and so we want to make sure we set you up for success. So Stanford University is a really interesting place. How many of you have attended an orientation before? Just out of curiosity. Okay. How many of you have heard the story that the Stanfords went to Harvard and begged them to let them donate money to Harvard University? Has anybody heard that story? Okay, that story is not true. It's completely false. The Stanfords were quite wealthy. They were entrepreneurs. Leland Stanford had founded the Transcontinental Railroad, and very sadly, their son, Leland Stanford Jr., yes, that's the real name of Stanford University, Leland Stanford Jr. University, died of typhoid fever. And out of their grief, they decided that they wanted to found an institution to educate the children of California. In doing that, as good entrepreneurs and venture capitalists do, they did an East Coast tour, and they took a look at the great institutions of the East so that they could think about how they might want to found an institution here at Stanford. And what was really interesting is the founding of this institution. From the very beginning, we had women in our first graduating class and people of color, and it was a very, very diverse first class, and that was really, really interesting and is in the roots of this institution. So I just want to say that from an entrepreneurial standpoint and from a diversity standpoint, that those are kind of founding principles of this institution. A few other things is that you'll find as you take courses with us that Stanford has a bias towards creating useful citizens, which is noted in the charter as well. So many of the courses that you take, our faculty get very hands-on in terms of how they think about the content and how they ask you to practice the content. So just a couple of big picture ideas. Today, the university has 7 schools. You can see them here. You can see that roughly we have more graduate students than we have undergraduates, but the number of undergraduates is creeping up. So we're a research institution. Our faculty are some of the most productive faculty in the world in terms of the research dollars that are brought into this institution compared to the number of faculty that we have. So that's one of the things that makes us a top-tier institution. The School of Engineering. Our engineering faculty are extraordinarily productive. We have, of all the departments in the school, they're all ranked in the top 5, and you can see that CS, EE, and ME are all ranked number 1. Currently, we have alumni all over the globe who have founded companies, who are CEOs and executives at companies of all shapes and sizes. And so that's kind of a legacy here in the School of Engineering. One of the things about this building was donated and named after Jensen Huang, who was an honors cooperative student. He was a part-time master's degree student. This auditorium is named after the company that he founded after he left and graduated, NVIDIA. So there's a legacy here. If you walk out into the lobby, you'll see that there's a Google server sitting there. That is the first Google server that was sort of, you'll see it's made out of Legos, which is kind of fun and interesting to look at. And then if you walk down the hall, you'll see the kind of replica of the HP garage. And so the founders of HP, Hewlett and Packard, were graduate students of Frederick Terman, who was the dean of the School of Engineering. So there's a lot of history and legacy. There are a lot of engineering luminaries on the walls in this building, so you can walk around and they all have their own interesting stories. So I encourage you to do that while you're here today. So our center was actually founded by a grant by Hewlett and Packard in 1954 to help educate their engineers who had become out of date with technology. And so it was really cutting edge at the time, part-time master's degree at a distance. The folks at HP came to campus, took courses here, and then homeworks were literally shuttled and couriered back and forth, and examinations were couriered back and forth to those students on the HP campus. Today, obviously, we extend courses via streaming video and other mechanisms with massive open and online courses. Well, how many of you have taken a MOOC? How many of you have no idea what a MOOC is? Okay, that's interesting. So anyway, now we service many students around the globe, all different time zones. We know it's very challenging for you to pursue courses online at a distance. Here are some students that have been very successful in doing so, and we like to highlight them. We want to highlight you someday. So please let us know your stories and let us know how it's going throughout the year. As I mentioned, we have many graduates of the university. They're leaders in companies around the world. And here are some examples. Many of you might be part of these companies. We wanted to give you a sense of the types of folks that you might mingle with in your courses while you're here. Another important thing, we consider you an extended part of the Stanford community. So I'd encourage you to connect with each other, network today, find out who's in your courses with you. Take a moment to connect to our social media. That's an opportunity for you to have conversations about what's going on and to connect back with us so we can hear your stories. Maybe you'll be Jensen Huang one day and leave here and found a company. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Michelle, who's going to talk. Oh, I missed one thing. I do want to make a point to introduce some of the folks that you probably have interfaced with virtually. So Jonathan Notman is our Director of Student and Client Services. He oversees a team, Chrissy Diaz, Cecilia Canales, and Frank Maldonado, who will help you triage things like enrolling in courses, homeworks and examinations. Frank is primarily responsible for that. And we wanted to put faces to names so that you get an opportunity to see who those folks are. They're all in the lobby, so we hope you connect with them while you're here if you've exchanged emails with them. And then with that, now I will turn it over to Michelle, who's going to talk a little bit about how the quarter will work for you.
Thanks, Carissa. Okay, well, thanks so much for joining us. Can you all hear me? Okay, excellent. So before I actually get into the nuts and bolts of how you will access courses and interact and interface with the Stanford faculty and SCPD team, I want to get a show of hands really quick. How many of you are taking courses through the non-degree option? Lots of you, great. And how many of you are taking courses through the Honors Cooperative Program, Master's Program? Okay, great, excellent. Well, we're thrilled to have you all participating with us in classes. We're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about the differences between the pieces of the portfolio, the individual classes, graduate certificates, and the master's degree program. We're also going to talk about how you log into our website and access your class videos, because you'll be doing that next week, so I'm sure that that's what you guys are going to want to hear about and how to find the video content. We're also going to give you some resources for technical support if something comes up and you can't access your videos. We want to make sure that you know who to contact. And then finally, some of the information about SUNet, your Stanford University Network ID, which you will use for a number of different sites and resources here on campus, and course websites, platforms that you'll be using in partnership with your courses. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So the non-degree option is a part of our portfolio that allows non-matriculated students to take courses on an individual basis. You take the courses for graduate credit and a grade. You complete all the same assignments, homework. You take the same exams as the students that are in the classroom on campus. You just are not matriculated in a program. The benefit of the non-degree option program, as many of you are probably learning now, is that it allows you to kind of test drive the classes at Stanford and see how it fits into your life with work and family before you decide to embark on a graduate certificate or a credential or pursue a terminal master's degree. It allows you to start out and see how the courses fit into your life. We're on a quarter system and things move quickly, so it's a good way to be able to experience that for the first time. For those of you that have taken a course and you guys realize that, I think I want to continue and pursue a graduate certificate, we have roughly 30 graduate certificates that are available online. They are completely online, and they allow students to complete coursework in a focused area of the curriculum to demonstrate depth of knowledge in that area. So they consist of about 3 to 5 courses, and the courses are anywhere between 3 and 5 units. It demonstrates some expertise in areas like management science or mining massive data sets and data science. So that is part of the non-degree option program, but it's a little bit more commitment that you can end up with a Stanford credential when you complete that. The Honors Cooperative Program, as Carissa mentioned a little bit ago, is a master's degree. It is not an online master's degree, it's a part-time master's degree program. So you have the flexibility of taking courses on campus or online. You are in the same applicant pool as the graduate programs here on campus. It's a very competitive pool. You take the same degree programs, and at the end you leave with a Stanford master's degree that is the same degree as anyone here on the Stanford campus. You're part of the Stanford alumni, and it gives you all the same rights and privileges as a regular master's student. So for those of you that complete a non-degree option course or potentially a graduate certificate, the nice thing also is that if you start through the non-degree option, and I'll talk about this a little bit on the next slide, there's kind of a progression that can happen. You start out taking courses on an individual basis to see how it fits in with your life, decide that you want to pursue a graduate certificate, and then if you decide that you want to pursue a degree, you need to apply to the degree program through the normal admissions process. And if you are offered admission and accept, you can actually roll over 18 units that you completed as a non-degree option student to your master's degree. So you actually start out about a third of the way through the program when you start through the non-degree option. And then the master's degree is 45 units of credit. And you do have 5 years to complete the master's degree through the Honors Cooperative Program. The time starts when you take your first class as a master's student, it doesn't count the time that you spent in the certificate or the non-degree option program. So this is our website. I'm sure that you've all seen this site and are familiar with this page as you've registered to attend this orientation event. But I want to talk a little bit about how you're going to access your class videos, because you're going to be doing that, like I said, starting next Monday. So you'll go ahead and log into your My Stanford Connection account through the typical fashion, and when you get to your home page, there is a link right there on your home page for online videos. You'll go ahead and click on that, and so I know that we sometimes get questions. We do post class schedules on the courses on our website, and we get a lot of questions about why is that, aren't these online? The reason that we post the class times on our website is because we want you to know when the videos will be available for you. So if the class is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class, 10 to 11:50, the videos will be up online and available for you to view within about 2 hours of the completion of class on campus. So by 2 p.m., you should be able to watch the class for that day. So we want to make sure that you are aware that the videos will be up pretty quickly, and we expect you to follow along with the class schedule and keep up with all of the deadlines, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. So you will go ahead and access the videos on that course homepage. When you click on that link for the online videos, you'll be taken to the video player. The videos are, I'm happy to say, they are HTML5 compliant, so they can be downloaded and watched offline for those of you that maybe travel with work, which is great. And they're also archived in the video player in reverse chronological order, so you will have the most recent video up on top, but the videos will be stacked historically so that you can go back and refer to those videos as the quarter progresses. I'll talk a little bit more about the actual player in a moment, but you can access streaming live, not live, streaming at the 2-hour time mark, or you can go ahead and download it in low or high resolution and watch it later offline. You can also advance the speed if you wanted to go through the lectures a little bit more quickly. As you can imagine, lectures have different speeds in which they speak, and sometimes you can speed it up to 2.0 and get through the video in a much quicker pace. There are some that I would fast forward. This gentleman up here on the screen is not one of those. For anybody who's taken a CS course, Keith Swartz is very energetic and talks quite quickly. I wish we had a slow down speed for him. We don't. But so when you're watching the videos, be aware of, on the video player at the lower nav bar, to be able to look for those features. Another feature that we have are the bookmarks and the clips, and these are going to be really important for you when you're watching the videos of the class. If there's something that the instructor says, hey, this is going to be on your final, so pay attention to this, you can bookmark that and put a note in there so that you understand that this is something you want to go back and visit when you're reviewing for final exams. You can also, if there's something that the instructor is talking about, that maybe it's a formula or a concept that is a little tricky and you're getting stuck and you have questions, you can also make a clip and you can email that to the instructor. So if you have questions, you can say to him, hey, I'm stuck on the 52-minute mark of this date. I need a little bit more help with this concept. Can you go over this with me? Or send it to the TAs and they can go ahead and walk through it with you, or set up a Google Hangout or something so you can talk to them and work through it. So those are two features that are going to be really helpful. Also with the bookmark, you can mark things privately or take notes, mark them privately, or you can share with the others that are enrolled in that class as well. So those are two great tools. And then you can see on the right-hand side of the video player where you can go into the tab that has these things that you've marked and archived. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, excellent. If you have problems accessing your video, every once in a while there's a firewall when somebody's trying to watch the videos at work, or maybe there was a guest speaker in the class and we needed them to sign a release so that we can post the video online. Every once in a while there will be a delay in the video posting. It's very infrequent, but it does happen. If you are not able to access your videos or you don't find them there, please don't monkey around trying to figure out how to be able to fix it. Reach out to us. We have a very robust team of technical experts that are available to help you with any kind of technical issues you have. They can likely resolve it in a matter of minutes. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know if there's something that is going on. We'll get on it right away and make sure we resolve it for you quickly. So each of you that is enrolled in a course will have what's called a Stanford University Network ID. This is a SUNet, and this will be referred to in lots of emails from us. And you'll need this to access a lot of the portals that are used in conjunction with your courses. So a SUNet allows you to access your Stanford account. This is not the same as your My Stanford Connection account. You don't actually need a SUNet to access your SCPD My Stanford Connection account. But there is a portal called Access, AXESS, and that is a university portal for students and faculty. You'll find things there like your grades, and you need to make sure that you can log in with your SUNet and your password. You have to authenticate to be able to get into that system. So you'll use your SUNet for that. If you're logging into a course website, a lot of courses will use like coursework or other platforms, Piazza, CCNet. You'll need a SUNet to be able to access those as well. And you'll also, as part of that SUNet, you'll have an email account, a Stanford email account that you should all be aware of, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But the SUNet will also be your email address. So my name is Michelle Rice. My SUNet could be mrice, and my email would be mrice@stanford.edu. So your SUNet's going to be the key, kind of how you integrate at Stanford. One of the reasons that I wanted to call out the email that you'll have is because the university does send out evaluations for the courses that they use to be able to make sure that courses are aligned to what is important for the students to learn. They want to get feedback on the teaching team. They want to make sure that the course materials are aligned with what was kind of presented in the course description. So we want to make sure that you get access to that evaluation because if you submit it, it also allows you to get your grades earlier as well. And so we want to make sure, for those of you that have company pay and you need to do reimbursement, we want to make sure you get your grades as quickly as possible. So please do check your Stanford email regularly so that you know when those come. They usually are sent out 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the quarter. So keep an eye out for that and make sure you complete it and submit it. So the course websites, like I mentioned, there's like my CCNet, there's also coursework, which is the largest one that most courses use. There's one called NovoEd, which is a site that was developed by Stanford faculty to host team project work, and it facilitates teamwork. So you'll go ahead and use this along with the videos. You'll access the videos through our website, and then these other course websites is where you'll find things like class materials, a class roster. A lot of faculty will have you submit homework on this site. So you're going to want to be able to be familiar with the course website. The faculty typically announce this in the first lecture, so you'll know which site you guys will be using. So please pay attention to that. It also has the syllabus, which you should be able to access. It has office hours, the teaching team information, the names, emails, contact information. It has office hours for both the faculty and the TAs. So there's a lot of information on the course website that you're going to be able to access, that you're going to want to be familiar with. So please do check that out early in the quarter, hopefully the first day or so. A lot of courses also use different platforms to be able to support the online community. So for instance, one of them is Piazza. It's a discussion forum platform. And so a lot of times TAs and faculty will use these sites to be able to have students ask questions. And it's more of a peer question platform where students will ask questions, and a lot of times students will weigh in and they'll respond to those questions. And then the things that there's themes starting to bubble up about the questions that people have, those will kind of surface up to the top, and the faculty and the teaching team will weigh in on those as well. So please make sure that you're familiar with those. Again, for office hours and for problem sessions, a lot of faculty and staff are using now things like Google Hangout or WebEx or Zoom, which allow you to have like a video conferencing to be able to connect with the teaching team. So find out if your teaching team for your course offers those to the students. And a lot of times, even if they don't, if you want that, ask for it. And a lot of times it's just as simple as setting up an appointment to be able to connect with you. So please do voice that to your teaching team so that they know what you'd like from them. So one of the things that we wanted to highlight is that on our website, under the Programs tab, we do have student handbooks. And this is where we have a lot of our policy information that you should become familiar with. It has information about tuition and grades. It has policies around dropping courses. It has information about resources like course advisors, libraries. So it has a lot of information you're going to want to access throughout the quarter. So we do ask that you become familiar with those handbooks so that you understand the policies and the guidelines, and anything you can use to be able to help you navigate a little easier. We do have those resources available for you. So I want to talk a little bit about the homework process. How many of you are in the class for the first time student with us? Most of you. Okay, excellent. So the homework and the exams process is really important, so I want to spend a little time on this. So a lot of times the faculty will simply have you submit homework through their course website. So for instance, if you are taking a course that is using coursework, there is a designated upload where you can put your homework right there for the teaching team to collect and grade. If the teaching team asks you to submit to them directly, please do so. We don't want to become a barrier between you and your teaching team. But sometimes they will want us to be able to manage the homework process for you. And in that kind of a scenario, we have a distribution department that handles the homework process. And essentially what you would do is email the homework to us, or I don't know, those of you that still have a fax machine can fax it to us, but most of them just email it to us. And we'll go ahead and make sure that we print it and distribute it to the teaching team the same day or the next morning. So it's also, if it comes to us, we do have the ability to date and time stamp that, and we keep it on file for a year. So if there's any question about, oh, we never got this assignment, it's not in the grade book, we can pull that up for you and make sure that we can resend it. So it's a good idea to keep us in the loop on that process. But again, like if you are taking a computer science course and you have a huge algorithm that you need to be able to submit, by all means, work directly with the teaching team and submit it in the format that they're asking and through the medium that they have for all of the other students. But we do have an infrastructure in place for those of you that are instructed to submit your homework to SCPD. So once we do receive it, like I said, we will go ahead and either print it and bring it to, or we will go ahead and forward it on to the teaching team. They will go ahead and receive it, and then they'll grade it with all of the other student assignments, and then they'll go ahead and leave it in a Dropbox for the distribution department to pick up. And then we will go get that, bring it back to SCPD offices, scan it, and then return it to you so that you have their grade and feedback on your assignments. If you find that you don't receive an assignment back, please reach out to us right away. And I ask that because a lot of times when the teaching teams are grading, they're grading as a group and they've got, 100, 200, sometimes several hundred homework assignments to grade. And yours may get put in the box for the on-campus students. And if we need somebody to go and find it and retrieve it and get it back to you, it's better that we know sooner than later if you don't receive your homework so that you can get that feedback so that you can use that for your next assignment. So please, if you ever wonder, err on the side of caution and reach out to us so that we can look into it. The exam process. So as many of you are probably already aware, and hopefully most of you have already appointed, SCPD students are required to have an exam monitor for every course that they take. The reason is because taking courses online, we need to preserve the integrity of the exam and make sure that students have an appropriate space and time to be able to take exams. So we ask all students to appoint someone in this role within the first week or 10 days of the quarter. That gives us time to verify that person, and I'll talk about who can and cannot be an exam monitor in a second. But we need to verify who they are, what their role is, make sure it's not your mom or your girlfriend. But we want to make sure that it's somebody that is either an HR representative at your company. If you work for yourself or you have your own company and you don't have someone in this role, then we can go ahead and have an exam proctoring or an exam monitor appointed to you through a proctoring service. You can also use someone who is at a public library. You can also have someone proctor the exam who is at another institution. So there's lots of options that you guys can use, but everyone has to have an exam monitor on file. Even if you're planning to come to campus for the exams, you need to have one on file just because, who knows, you might be driving to campus and get a flat tire and you don't make it, and we need to make sure that we can send it to someone who can give it to you. So please do make sure that that's taken care of. Something that we actually have started doing just, I think, last summer is students who do not have a monitor appointed by, I believe it's the drop deadline, we actually disable their videos until they get someone appointed. So we don't want there to be any interruption in your video access, so please do make sure that you get that taken care of. It's a really important part of our process, and it's also required by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, WASC. Their accreditation body requires that we have those on file for all students taking remote education. So once you have the exam monitor appointed, what happens then is the faculty and teaching teams will get us the exams no less than a day or two before the exam is supposed to be sat, and we will go ahead and forward that out to your monitor that's on file. The exam, along with any guidelines or instructions, materials you can or cannot use, the length of time that you have to complete the exam, and they will make sure that you have that time and space to be able to complete your exam according to the guidelines of the teaching team. Once you have finished taking your exam, you will turn that back to your monitor, who will sign off that this was completed according to the Stanford Honor Code, and they will return that exam to us, and we will forward that to the teaching team. Once the teaching team receives it, they will go ahead and grade it with all the rest of their exams, and they will return it to us. We'll scan it and return it to the students if the teaching team elects to return exams. Sometimes faculty do not return final exams. So they'll let you know on an individual class basis if they will be returning your exam. But that's what the process is. Does anyone have any questions about the exam process?
How does taking exam in class work?
Excuse me?
How does taking the exam in the class would work?
How does taking the exam in the class work?
Yeah.
So it really depends on the faculty, what their policy is about taking exams on campus, but I'm glad you asked it because it's something that's good to know. Typically, if you live within 50 miles of the Stanford campus, you are encouraged to come and sit in the class and take the exam with your peers. If you are unable to do so, then you can take it remotely at your place of work or at one of the other proctoring options. And we'll go ahead and make sure that they have that in advance of the time that you're supposed to sit for it. But some faculty, they are hard and fast about making sure that people that are within 50 miles are here on campus. So ask them about that. A lot of times they'll mention that in the beginning of the class because they know that there are SCPD students that are taking the classes. But if you are able to, I think it's great to be able to show up and take it with the class here on campus. And I saw a question over here as well, yes.
So let's say for a particular course, it doesn't have final, it doesn't have any exam, it only has a project and assignments and stuff. So do it still need to something?
So we're actually working on that process right now. That's another very good question. So for those that are remote, the question was, if there is no final exam, do I still need to do this? So historically, the answer has been yes, you still need to have one on file, simply because we are required to have this for all of our students. We're looking at ways that we can be a little bit more flexible with that because we realize that there are lots of scenarios, one of them being that there's a project that you are going to be doing or a presentation that you're going to be giving, or perhaps there's a take-home exam that is open book, and so there's a lot of scenarios that would kind of make this seem silly. For now, the answer is yes, we do need that to be completed, and we are working on a way to make it a little bit less burdensome for the students. Yes?
I actually have two questions. The first is, for this quarter, when is the exam period? What's weeks?
It is, I want to say like the 11th or 12th through the 15th or 16th. I'm not 100% of the dates, but I can certainly look into that and let you know before the end of the networking session tonight.
Okay. And the second question is, if for work or for work-related purposes, like say you have to present at a conference or something, if that conflicts with your exam schedule, how do you work around that or within that?
That's a great question. So the question is, what if you have a conflict and you're unable to take the exam when it's happening? One other thing that I'll say about when the final exams are is if you go to the calendar on our website, which I think Larry will show you how to find it in a moment, we do have the final exam dates on that calendar. and I could still have it for you by the end of the session tonight. But most importantly, if you do have a conflict with the exam, so the exam dates are known like a year in advance. So they are already posted on the Stanford site, they're posted on our site, so there should be no ambiguity about when exams are happening. So you need to plan for them. And we've had students that have had to drop classes because they would be unavailable and the faculty would not allow leniency. It really depends on the instructor. So what I would suggest is if there is a chance that you will not be available for your final exam, reach out to your instructor and do it early and let them know. There are faculty that will give you a day, maybe 2 leniency of when to do it, but you need to realize that they can't give it too early because they need to protect the integrity of the exam, and because of grading and entering grades into the database at Stanford, they can't give it too delayed. So there's usually, if there's any flexibility, it's usually a day or 2 max. And so you would need to be able to reach out and ask them that early to be able to find out if that will be available to you. But typically we tell students work is not an excuse to miss deadlines. And if you're gonna miss a deadline, the final exams is not the one to miss. So did you wanna say something, Carissa?
December 7th to the 11th.
December 7th through the 11th. Thanks, guys. Okay, any other questions? I saw that one was there, yes.
Yeah, I was going to kind of build off of that question. Can you have more than one exam monitor if you often work in different offices?
Yes, in fact, what we typically ask is to have people appoint a primary exam monitor and then a secondary exam monitor for precisely that reason. Or maybe your exam monitor that you appoint is sick or is out of the office for whatever reason. It's good to have a backup just in case, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yes?
You mentioned something about verification for exam monitors. What is that?
So essentially, when students appoint an exam monitor to serve for their exams, we are required to verify that that person is who you say they are, which means that we reach out to them, we have them confirm their name, their title, their role, to make sure that it's not Joe in the cubicle next door and not really your manager. So we just need to make sure that they are who they say they are, because we actually ask them to adhere to the Stanford Honor Code as well, because they are going to be administering this exam for you. So we just need to make sure, and for reasons more for like just not knowing than anything else, sometimes we find out that like, oh, it's actually not somebody that would qualify for that role, so we need to be able to reach out to the student and say, hey, you know what, they're a peer and not a manager, so we just need to make sure that you appoint someone else. And so it gives you, by doing it by the deadline that we set, it allows us to verify. You can look around. We probably have, I think we last count was 700 people that are enrolled in classes this autumn through SCPD. So we have a lot of exam monitors to verify. And if we need to reach out to the student, we want to have time to do that so that you can make a change and update that. So there's a lot of pieces in the puzzle, and we want to make sure that that happens before you have a midterm, perhaps. So I'm going to go.
What's the timeline for the midterm examination for this autumn quarter?
So the midterms typically happen about week 5. I'm going to move forward, and we're going to be out in the networking event afterwards, so I'm happy to take any other questions about exams. This is a hot topic that I know there's always lots of questions, but I need to really move it along. And now I'm going to hand it off to Larry.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Can everyone hear me? My mic up, I guess. Just one other thing on midterm exams. Midterm week 5, about halfway through, but it depends on the course. You may have a midterm week 3, you may have a midterm week 7, or even week 8. So just as the final exam schedule is set almost a year in advance, so you need to be checking that. During the first week of classes, or even before this week, check the syllabus for your course, see when those midterms might be scheduled so you can match it up with your own schedule. So I have the great privilege here of talking a little bit more about your rights and responsibilities. We won't dwell too long on these things. Many of you probably have already realized that we have the slides as a handout in your packet along with all the other information. So you'll have time later to really study it if you like. Michelle mentioned earlier the academic calendar. There are different ways to find it on the Stanford website. You can certainly find it on our SCPD website by going to admissions, maybe not the most obvious thing to click to find the calendar, but admissions, and then there's a link over here for academic calendar, and then you can go month by month. There's also some filtering here you can do for academic deadlines or holidays, webinars, and so on and so forth. So you have some options there in terms of how you actually display the calendar. But make sure you're glancing at that occasionally so you get a sense of where you are and what's going on. Important deadlines. We've already been talking about some of those deadlines. The first day of instruction is an important deadline for enrollment and tuition purposes. If you are not having your company reimburse tuition, then you need to have your tuition paid by the first day of instruction. Hold on here. Here we go. Adding or dropping courses. Technically, the deadline to add or drop a course is the end of week 3 in the quarter. Practically, however, for adding courses, it's usually the first week, because by the second week or third week in a 10-week quarter, too much has just gone on to try to catch up, even though technically you can add the course. And the instructor, the professor, also has some say. Some of them will not allow students to add, say, after the end of week 2, even though technically you could do it after the end of week 3, just because they know from past experience that students will not do well if they add too late. For dropping courses, it's the end of week 3. If you drop a course, it disappears completely from your record, as long as you do it by the end of week 3, 5 p.m. Pacific time. So for those of you in different time zones, take note of that. If for some reason you forget about it and don't do it until the Monday after, it's really sort of a too bad type of situation. Okay, these deadlines are very strict. Very, very difficult to get exceptions to the deadline. So again, make sure you know what the calendar is and what's going on. Grading basis, letter grade versus credit, no credit. In general, you will want to take things for letter grades, especially if you're interested perhaps in a certificate down the line and or, of course, a master's degree. The grading basis can actually be changed back and forth as many times as you want up until the end of week 8 of the quarter, so you do have some time to think about it, but again, in general, for all of you, the preferred option or recommended option really is to do a letter grade. The withdrawal deadline is also the end of week 8 in the quarter. Sometimes life happens, maybe you get really sick, family emergency or whatever, and you're not able to complete the course, and it's after the drop deadline. Do you have any options? And the answer is yes, it's a withdrawal option. The course will stay on your transcript. It doesn't count against you in terms of grades or anything, although you'll get a W notation just for withdrawal. I've advised many students over the years, and sometimes I say, that W stands for wisdom. Excuse me. In other words, you made a wise choice at that time. If, however, something like that happens, come and talk to us first, okay? So we can work through the options with you and see what's going on. And then, of course, deadlines for assignments and exams, you'll find that on your course website and course syllabus. And as Michelle mentioned, travel or workload is not a reason for an exception, so you want to plan ahead in these things. Please involve us if things like that happen. Course evaluations, actually this was already mentioned by Michelle in terms of the end of quarter evaluation for Stanford, but we also have our SCPD midterm evaluation. You'll get a link via email around about week 5, and it allows us to get some feedback. We share it with the teaching team, and sometimes they can make mid-course corrections in terms of what's going on in the course if necessary. And then the university end of quarter evaluation that Michelle already mentioned. Again, you'll want to do this if for no other reason you'll get your grades faster. If you do not do the end of quarter evaluation, usually you have to wait about 2 weeks before you can see your grades. And you can see there's an FAQ site for more information about that. Stanford Honor Code has also been mentioned a couple times already. It was actually established at the request of students all the way back in 1921. And the reason was they wanted to make sure that a Stanford degree, a Stanford credential, meant something. They didn't want to get the reputation that you can come to Stanford and there's a lot of academic misconduct going on, so that if you take a course and you work hard, but somebody looks at that credential or that grade and says, well, I'm not so sure about that. Stanford has this reputation for a lot of shenanigans and things like that going on. And so basically, you actually have a handout, a little brochure in your packet that talks about the Stanford Honor Code, but if you want to sum it up, it's all students must complete their own work. Now, sometimes you do have projects, collaborative projects you work together, and the faculty will define the guidelines in terms of how that works. But in terms of citing material, quoting material if you're writing a paper or doing some sort of report, and so on and so forth, you need to make sure you adhere to those standards so that your grade, your degree, your credential actually means something out there in the world. There's an Office of Community Standards that handles all disciplinary action, and hopefully none of you will ever have to deal with them, but we try to make it a very fair process, but there is a process that you have to go through if that is the case. Finally, in this section, your rights and privacy, there's something called FERPA. You may hear that term around here occasionally. Family Education Rights and Privacy Act. It is a federal bit of legislation. Essentially, there are fairly significant rules and regulations in terms of how your information can be released, information that Stanford keeps, and so on and so forth. We can release information to Stanford faculty and staff who need it. That doesn't mean we can release, say, your grades to any faculty. They have to have a reason for seeing your grades, for example. So obviously faculty in the course or university staff who may have a need to know. We cannot, though, make public or otherwise release information without your consent. And this especially applies if you are in a situation where your company is paying for all or some of your tuition. To release information to them, such as your grades, so they can process a payment or whatever, you need to let us know that you give us permission to do that. And that just is part of the process of when you pay your tuition and go through all that. There'll be some sort of check off there that says, yes, I have read and understand this, and I give my permission. Okay, common student challenges. If you just think about this, a lot of these are fairly obvious, but just learning Stanford systems, any new software system, you can see you may have several systems, new systems in terms of the Stanford system, our SCPD website, your course website. Just give yourself a little time to learn how all those things work. It will become very familiar fairly quickly. Accessing class resources as well, of course. Creating teams and study groups when you're at a distance can be a little bit more of a challenge, but with all the online tools in use, things like Piazza and so on and so forth, it is easier, but just again, don't put things off to the last minute in terms of connecting with other students. Time zone differences for those of you really at a distance. Again, in terms of deadlines, the deadlines are Pacific Standard Time or Pacific Daylight Time, whatever one we happen to be on at the moment. So make sure you take that into account. Getting help also. Your teaching team, there's instructor, there are teaching assistants. They will have resources, online study groups sometimes and things like that, allowing you to get help, to ask questions online. But they're not customer service representatives, okay? They're there to point you in the right direction, not to solve the problem for you. And so it's very helpful if you have a question to try to identify, where am I having problems with this? Where am I stuck? Is it a certain thing in the video? Is it the problem itself? I don't quite understand what that means in terms of the wording. Or I got the first part, but then I'm stuck at the second part. If you can sort of specify your question a little bit more, then the teaching team can help you and point you in the right direction there. So those are just a few of the common student challenges, and we want to finish off now and give you 6 success tips here. And so the first 3, number 1, commit to a growth mindset. Commit to a growth mindset. What do we mean by that? Well, there's a professor here at Stanford named Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K, professor of psychology, very well known in her field. And she discovered a phenomenon that people tend to fall into one of two camps on various things. And she called one camp sort of a growth mindset and the other camp a fixed mindset. And fixed mindset people, and by the way, highly intelligent people can be in either camp here. So it doesn't relate to that. There may be some genetics involved. There may be some environment, upbringing involved and things like that. But just by doing various psychological tests, they discovered sort of these two groups of people. And fixed mindset people, unconsciously for the most part, feel that your abilities are fairly fixed. Your artistic ability, you either have it or you don't. Athletic ability, you either have it or you don't. Intellectual ability, you either have it or you don't. Doesn't mean that you can't get a little bit better at things, but the idea is at a certain point you will reach the limits of your ability. Growth mindset people, on the other hand, think that, sure, everybody, it's not saying everybody has the same amount of ability, but everybody has the ability to get better at something, whether it's artistically, athletically, intellectually, and so on and so forth. And you say, well, that sort of makes sense. But what's very interesting is that, especially they've done studies on highly intelligent people like all of you, like Stanford students and things like that. They've tracked them through hard courses. And when that first midterm comes, and a lot of them see grades they've never seen before, C+, Ds, things like that, they find that those who tend to have a growth mindset, and they can identify them via various measures, persevere and move forward, while those who have a fixed mindset maybe unconsciously just think, maybe I've hit my limits here. Maybe this course just isn't for me, or this course of study isn't for me. And so by the end of the course, those who start off with a growth mindset, even though in all other respects they're similar to those with the so-called fixed mindset, end up doing about 1 grade better than the fixed mindset people. Now we could go on and on about this, but let me just tell you, one good thing is that growth mindset versus fixed mindset, it's not fixed. That'd be sort of the fixed mindset view of growth mindset, right? You have it or you don't, right? Well, no, just by learning about growth mindset a little bit and reminding yourself about that you can learn new things and you can progress, then can put you into a better frame of mind. And achievement and success are correlated more with a growth mindset than a fixed mindset. And like I said, even very highly intelligent people can have a fixed mindset in this way, so that when they get that bad grade, they think it's saying something deep about themselves, when really all it's saying is it's a measure of how much they know or their level of skill at that certain point in time, and they can always increase that via a growth mindset. I have the Stanford logo up there, and the reason I have that there, when you see that, you should remember the growth mindset, because it's got the redwood tree on it. And for those of you in botany, perhaps, or whatever, redwood seeds are very, very small. They turn into these huge trees, of course. And even though, of course, trees don't have growth mindset or fixed mindset, it can be a symbol of the growth mindset there for you as a reminder. Another thing redwood trees have, by the way, they have resilience. They don't have perseverance and grit, but in terms of their ability to be impervious to fire to a certain extent, they can overcome that. So coming out of a growth mindset, we want you to cultivate resilience, cultivate perseverance, cultivate grit. In fact, there have been a lot of studies recently on exactly that. You think grit's sort of a down-home term in a sense. It actually is a study in psychology now, the study of grit. We have a fantastic website at Stanford. It's referenced in your notes, resilience.stanford.edu. We have videos there of very accomplished people who are connected to Stanford, professors, Supreme Court justices, CEOs, the founder of Pandora Music and Radio. And they talk about how they had to go through some really tough times to get to where they are now. And so they can serve as an inspiration for a growth mindset and for resilience there as well. So it will be a challenge in your courses at certain points. Cultivate resilience for that. Also remember that knowledge is constructed, not received. This is especially important for online courses because in many cases you're watching videos, right? What do we do when we watch online videos? We sort of passively watch them. Maybe rewind them a little bit, things like that. For knowledge, it's almost like building a skyscraper. You've got to actually lay those floors down and then you construct things on it. You say, how does this fit in with that? Where does this go? and so on and so forth. So it's not just a passive receptive process. You have to actively engage with the material and sort of generate over time. Experts are those who generate sort of a skyscraper of knowledge, a mental schema, as it were, of everything and how it all fits together. So knowledge is constructed, not received. Number 4, practice deep practice. Okay, you've got some weights there. How do you get stronger? Well, you lift weights. Now, the brain is not a muscle, of course, but the analogy is correct. You can't multitask and get deep practice out of that. You have to really engage with the material, as I said. You have to, set aside some time to really dig into the material and wrestle with it to become mentally stronger. And again, we have in the handout, it talks a little bit more about that. Really, that period of deep focus and attention. Now also, you can take advantage of what you might call micro-learning opportunities when you're waiting in line or whatever. Look at that problem that's going to be on the problem set, do in a few days. Just glance at it, think about it a little bit or whatever. And so take advantage of those as well. But of course, if you really want to get into the material, you're going to have to set aside some good time and focus and attention. Study smart. I won't go into this. We have a number of tips on the handout in your packet just to not just study harder, you may need to do that, but to use better techniques so that you do have that focus and attention for the time periods you need to do that. And then finally, for our success tips, embrace the challenge. Embrace the challenge. A couple of years ago, I had the honor of teaching a MOOC, a massive online open course on Einstein and the special theory of relativity, and had a number of quotes that I sprinkled throughout the course from Einstein. This is one of my favorite ones. The struggle to understand while performing creative and open-minded intellectual work is what ennobles humans and enriches our nature. So certainly in the courses you'll be taking here at Stanford, you'll be getting a lot of practical knowledge and experience for your career, for your work, either current work or future work. But also as you're doing that, as you're embracing the struggle, you'll be performing creative, intellectual work, and that's an ennobling and enriching process. So don't forget about that in the midst of the challenge as well. So those are our 6 success tips. Again, you'll find much more information in the handout. I encourage you to look at that and happy to discuss it further with you afterwards out in the foyer there. And just to remind you, okay, in fact, put this up on your wall or something similar to it. Stanford logo, right, means commit to a growth mindset, cultivate resilience. Knowledge is constructed, not just passively received. Practice deep practice, the weightlifting analogy to get into it. Study smart, and of course, embrace the challenge there. So now we're on to our question session, and I will turn it back to Michelle for a few final thoughts, and then we'll get to that.
Thanks, Larry. Okay, so we're wrapping up the presentation. If anyone has any questions, I would be happy to take them now. Yes?
What's the parking policy?
The parking policy? So the parking policy is that it's free after 4 p.m. If you are on campus for a seminar or something after 4 o'clock, then you don't have to worry about parking. You can park without a permit. Otherwise, permits are required. There are some metered parking in the different parking garages that are located throughout campus. And so if you are taking courses through the non-degree option, you are required to buy parking permits or use the meters before 4 p.m. I think it's like 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Does that help?
Can I add to that? Can you guys turn on my mic? I will also say that the parking attendants are very, very diligent, and the tickets are expensive. So I encourage you to not play parking lot roulette. Actually pay for parking, because it'll be much less expensive than the ticket that you'll get.
I know that we got a Twitter
We do.
So, question from Twitter. How do I find and collaborate with SCPD students who enrolled in the same course as me?
So one of the things that we actually started doing in the last couple of quarters is trying to facilitate some team building and peer support in the classrooms for the students that are enrolled through SCPD. If this is something that you are interested in doing, and I'm sure I'm going to get a ton of emails now, please reach out to me and let me know, and I will go ahead. One of the things, as Larry had mentioned with the FERPA Act, is that we need to make sure that we protect the privacy of the students, which includes emails, names, and that kind of personal information. So if there is a desire to connect with students that are in your class to be able to form study groups or project teams, please let me know. I will have to reach out to all of the students in that class through SCPD. It will not be with the on-campus students, it will be with the SCPD cohort. And I need to get explicit permission from each student to share their information. And essentially all that I ask for is their first and last name, their email address, and the city of their location, just for time zone purposes, and if there's somebody that's close by that you can go ahead and understand who's near to you. Once I get that, I usually give about 48 hours turnaround time, and once I receive approvals, I send it out to the class, and then you can go ahead and kind of self-connect. But we have started doing that over the last couple of quarters. And so in some courses, it doesn't really make sense. Other courses, they are project courses, and the faculty will work to be able to facilitate teams and project work. And so the teaching team may actually facilitate this for me. So find out what kind of course you're going to be in and what the faculty offers. And if it's not something that's done by the teaching team, I'm happy to go ahead and help with that effort.
Okay, another question. How can we move from graduate certificate programs to a master's?
So if you are interested in pursuing a master's degree and you've taken a number of courses through the honor or through the non-degree option program, you would need to apply to the master's program through the typical admissions process, which means you need to go through the graduate admissions site. You need to be able to submit a completed application. You need to be able to, which includes a statement of purpose. You need to have letters of recommendation. You need to, very importantly, take your GRE and submit your scores. And so there is the normal admissions process. It's very competitive for all of the departments, but you would go ahead and follow that. You'll be considered in the same applicant pool as the students that are interested in attending the graduate program here on the Stanford campus. And if you decide to accept an offer of admission, at that point you would elect to participate through the Honors Cooperative Program if you wanted to continue in your career, and then you can go ahead and do it on a part-time basis. Otherwise, if you're offered admission, you can certainly elect to come on campus and do a full-time program. But it definitely goes through the Office of Graduate Admissions. Yes, did you have a question in the back?
In the Masters of Electrical Engineering program, for example, you offer certain seminars that do not have a letter grade. So I do not understand how is the grading basis. How could it be of concern when there are certain seminars that are offered, which.
So the question is about grading when you're taking seminars. So there's a pretty simple answer. We do not include any seminars in graduate certificates, and in order to participate in a graduate certificate, you have to take courses for a letter grade to contribute it to the certificate. If you're in a degree program, there's a certain number of courses that you can take for credit, and there's a certain number of units that you need to take in seminars. So it's very different for the degree program as opposed to the certificate or the non-degree option program. I should also point out that many of the seminars are actually available online at no fee. You can access them through your My Stanford Connection account. They are typically put online later in the day from the day that the seminar is given, and you don't have to enroll unless you want credit for it. But they are widely available. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Is the on-campus library open to the SCPD students?
So the question is if the if the library is open to online students who are taking courses through SCPD, and the answer is yes, kind of. So you are able to access libraries as a SCPD student. You are not allowed to check out material. So if you are local in the area, as it looks like most of you are, or probably all of you are, you would just go ahead and bring your enrollment paperwork so that they can see that you are a student in the course, and then you will go ahead and be allowed to go into the library. You can use the materials and resources, you can photocopy things, but you just won't be able to take anything out. But yes, and there are a couple of libraries that you will have easy access to in the School of Engineering, and I believe that those are also listed on the resources page in your handout. Yes?
I was curious about how far in advance the registration deadline's open for later quarters. So for example, this one I think was about 6-7 weeks in advance of the actual quarter start.
Right.
Is that kind of the rule of thumb for all quarters, or does that change?
So we do open enrollment about 6 weeks before classes begin. We try to close it the week before classes start, just so that we can make sure we have everything squared away with all the systems so that you can start off on the right foot. And we usually post the courses online that we'll be offering for that next quarter about 4 to 6 weeks before we open enrollment, so that you can kind of go through and plan. I know that this is a little tricky for those of you that are trying to plan a year or 2 or 3 out. It's very tough to pinpoint the classes that will be available online, but I would say that it rarely changes. Every once in a while there will be a new course offered by the department and we'll get it online, or there's a really hot topic that's kind of developing and emerging, and so we'll get something online in that area. But the courses that are in a certificate program, we must offer online because students are pursuing a program and it has to be done at a distance. So you can pretty much bank on those courses being available online unless the department has decided not to offer it for a year, which occasionally does happen. Not very often with the certificate program. But it's pretty good rule of thumb to check previous quarters. We do have links on our site so you can look at previous quarter courses, and that way you can kind of at least plan out and then just confirm when we actually post that next quarter's courses online. Yes?
Would we have access to like scientific journals that the campus is subscribing to?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer to that. I would say that if there is a scientific journal or some kind of an article that you need to be able to access for your class, the faculty will make sure that you have access to it. But generally speaking, if it's available in the libraries, I would think yes, but I would need to look into that and give you a more accurate answer. I'm not confident in my answer, so I would want to circle back around with you and confirm that. Yes?
Do you have access to video from courses offered in prior quarters?
So the question is whether there is access available to courses from prior quarters, and the answer is no, not at this time. We offer the courses online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during the active quarter, but once the quarter is completed, we do remove the courses from online because they are covered by the Teach Act, and they're only covered in the tuition-based cohort that's offered at that quarter. And I should also point out that because we do allow students to download videos, that at the end of the quarter, you need to dispose of those videos. You cannot keep them on your machines. And we do have you sign off for that somewhere in your account when you sign up with us. Yes?
Is it okay to attend classes on campus?
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't hear you.
Is it okay to attend classes on campus?
Is it okay to sit into classes on campus?
Yeah.
If you're in the non-degree option program, the answer is no, unfortunately. And the reason is because I know there's a few people from departments in the audience, and they can probably attest to this. We schedule classrooms according to the estimated number of students that will be in the classroom on campus, which is matriculated students. And like any other university, classrooms are a hot commodity here. And so it's a very complex problem to be able to schedule classes, and it would be awful to displace degree-seeking students with students who are not matriculated, that are taking courses, maybe individual courses, and not part of a degree program. So while we would love to host students that are in non-degree on campus, we're unable to do so because, as I just mentioned, we have about 700 students that are enrolled in the non-degree option program this quarter alone, and we don't want people, the fire marshal would probably come and harass us if we had people sitting in the aisles of the classroom. So we need to be really protective of the students that are matriculated to be able to have them have a seat in class. But if you're an honors cooperative student, I know there was a couple of you in here, then yes, you would be able to sit in on a class as part of the matriculated student body. Yes?
So how will that work with exams?
So with exams, we actually have a different scheduling process. The question was, how does the attendance work with final exams? So when we are scheduling final exams, we actually reach out to the departments. A lot of them need alternate seating to be able to have the exams taken. And so there are times where we schedule 2, 3, 4 classrooms to accommodate one class. And so there is a lot more flexibility in those scenarios for exams. I'm going to take one more question, and then I'm going to have you guys go out and network because I don't want to cut too much into your time. Yes, in the back.
I'm lucky one. All right.
You are the lucky one.
Is there any timeline at which you can transfer from the transfer to the full-time status once admitted to a part-time program? So I mean, let's say I'm beginning my master's, okay, this autumn quarter. I want to transition into full-time. Is there a minimum timeline when I can do that?
So there is paperwork that you would need to submit to be able to transfer to a full-time. The question was, if I'm in a master's degree program, is there a time frame to be able to transfer from part-time to full-time or even from full-time to part-time? And the answer is yes, there's paperwork. There are deadlines to be able to do that, to submit it. It needs to happen in advance of the start of the quarter. And I would encourage you to reach out to our student services team to get the specifics on that. And they're out in the lobby this evening, so they can go ahead and answer questions. And before we actually release you, there's a few people that I want to just call out in the audience because I want you to know who they are. So we have 2 of our course advisors with us this evening. Joe Barsoyan is right here. He's the Management Science and Engineering course advisor. So if you have questions about content or courses or instructors, or you just want to talk to him and network a little bit, he's here and he'll be in the lobby afterwards to be able to chat with you. We also have Roshni Cooper, who is in the back here. She's our electrical engineering course advisor, and she is here again to answer any questions that you guys might have about EE content. We also have Emily Wang. She is in the admissions department of electrical engineering, and she'll be out there with us as well. We have Deborah Gordon here in the back, and she actually is with the Freeman Spogli Institute, and she oversees the International Security Graduate Certificate. So if any of you are taking courses in that program, Deborah is the authority on all things international security at SCPD, and so she's a great resource to be able to reach out and talk to. I've probably missed some people. Steve Bagley, thank you. He is the director of the Biomedical Informatics program, and so he is here to answer questions for any of you that are taking courses in biomedical informatics or clinical informatics. We also have Lori Cottle. She is the Student Services Manager in Management Science and Engineering. She'll be out in the lobby. She's not, I don't think, in the auditorium, but she'll be out in the lobby as well. And then the folks that have been speaking, you'll see some folks from SCPD that are wearing black shirts that say Stanford University on them. Please don't be shy. Come up and talk to us, introduce yourself, and ask us any questions that you have. And we're thrilled you guys could join us. We have some food and some drinks out in the lobby. Please enjoy. Thank you.